What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about my recent L5S1 fusion surgery that I just had. We're hitting almost 2 weeks post-op, and I kind of wanted to discuss kind of what led me to where I'm at today, what I had done to injure myself, and then what kind of my thought process was going from managing the pain to deciding to have surgery. So back in 2014, 2015, I really started getting heavy into CrossFit and the competitive side of CrossFit. I started a training methodology to train specifically for like the open and the games and that kind of thing, which is a more advanced kind of structured version of a standard kind of CrossFit cycle, if you will. Um, During that training, the volume increases. You start doing two a days. You start really pushing your body to lift heavier, go faster, that kind of thing. Because obviously that's how you have to compete in the top level of CrossFit. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, pretty competitively, got pretty good. Finished top 100 in my region 2 or 3 years in a row. Um, did fairly well, but that was what I did for my hobby. I was a competitive CrossFitter. So in doing that, like I said, you're lifting heavy. You've got a more structured kind of like strength cycle, that kind of thing. And I started doing this one particular squat cycle, and on one day it had a very specific type of intense finisher, and what that was after your normal squat session, and the finisher was to do your 20 rep max squat, but do it as fast as you can. Um, so I don't remember what weight I had on the bar, but it was relatively light as compared to what I could max or whatever. So um, I was doing those squats, moving fairly quickly, half second down, half second up for all 20 reps. And then about, towards the end of that rep scheme, you're going to start to get tired. Your form can kind of break down. And that's what happened to me. And I noticed I was really bouncing out of the bottom. And as you do that, you lose that lumbar curve in the bottom of the squat, because I didn't have the hip mobility to go all the way down or ass to grass like everybody wants to be. So in order to make up for that lack of mobility, my hips would curl under and I would lose that lumbar curve. So during that 20 rep max, about I think it was 17th or 18th rep, I felt like a little twinge in my back, and I was like, oh, that felt weird, but didn't really think much of it. Continued on, finished the day. Fast forward a couple months, the pain still hadn't gone away. So I went and saw my sports medicine doctor, and he recommended, hey, you need to lay off it. You may have a bulging disc. Prescribed me some anti-inflammatories, some pain medicine, that kind of thing. So started to lay off my training a little bit. Wasn't lifting heavy, wasn't doing like the high impact stuff to kind of give my back a rest. Did that for a couple months. Pain seemed to relieve itself, but then eventually the pain came back, and this time it came back worse. So this time I ended up going and getting referred to a spine specialist for pain management. They did MRI. Lo and behold, I got a bulging disc. So we went on a pain management protocol, and tried to avoid, the surgical route. He actually recommended me go to a surgeon, and I went to a local surgeon here who's one of the best in the area, and he kind of concurred and had the same outlook on it. And he said that, we want to try to avoid everything we can, or avoid surgery with everything we can. You need to exhaust all of your options outside of surgery before we even go down that path. So that's what I did. I did physical therapy. I did, stretching routines. Laid off almost completely as far as like back intensive type exercises. Laid off that completely. I did that for about a year, and the pain improved some. And then, some days were good, some days were bad. It would the good days were pretty good. I didn't feel 100%, but I felt pretty good. But the bad days were pretty debilitating. So this kind of went on for about 2 years, of me just kind of going through the motions, being in pain pretty much every day. But then the last couple of months, it had gotten real bad to where I was having trouble standing. I was getting a lot of numbness down my legs. So I knew something was wrong. So I went and saw the surgeon again. And we sat and discussed all my options. I had told him, hey, I've been doing this for 2 years. I'm kind of getting tired. Like something's got to give. Like what do I do? So when we discussed all of our options, he told me all the risks and benefits of surgery and that kind of thing. And he was saying, well, it sounds like you may need a microdiscectomy. So I was like, okay, cool. I've done the research. I know that those aren't a huge deal. So he was like, well, let's get a follow-up MRI to make sure we're on the same path, and then we can discuss what surgical options you can do. Went and got the updated MRI, came back, and turns out the bulging discs had turned into a full herniation, and it was full lateral, meaning it was the entire left side had fully herniated and was just sitting on the nerve. So at that point, it was kind of like, well, shit. I wanted to discuss with him what are my options. Do I still have the option of a microdiscectomy? If not, what's the next step? And first thing he said to me when he walked in the door is, well, this one's going to be tricky. So that's not something you want to hear from a spine surgeon when he first walks in the door. So as we got to talking, he explained to me that in order to do the microdiscectomy, he would have to remove so much bone from that left side that it would basically almost render that whole left side with no structural integrity whatsoever. And he basically said it was a Band-Aid. It could help get, it would get the disc off of the nerve, but if I still had pain in the actual joint, he said it may or may not even help that. And judging from my symptoms, I didn't have too much leg pain. It was there every once in a while, but most of my pain was localized in the middle of my back. And he said, if that's the case, that means, that the issue is in the actual joint, not just the disc on the nerve. So he said my best option would be to have a fusion. And I know everybody hears the word fusion and is like, oh no, don't do that, don't do that. And that was kind of my thought process too. And I told him, I said, man, I've heard nothing but bad things about fusions. They say once you get your back fused, then it starts working its way up your back and blah 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 blah. So he explained to me that, hey, it's not, if you're young like I am, I'm 36, and the rest of your discs above are healthy, then you have way less of a chance of the degeneration moving up your back. And he did explain, like, hey, here's the MRI of all your other discs. They're tip top, they're healthy, everything's good. So that kind of eased my mind, and I kind of came to grips with, okay, I'm probably just going to have a fusion and get it over with. Because he said if I did do the microdiscectomy, they went in there, they trim it, and then 2 years down the road, it kind of fails, or I get the same symptoms coming back, then he's going to have to go back and do a fusion and then worry about further degeneration, structural damage, and going through scar tissue to even get to the vertebrae to be able to fuse them. So it was kind of a, hey, do you just want to bite the bullet now and get it over with, or just try to put a Band-Aid on it and send it down the road? And I was like, man, let's just bite the bullet and get it done. So that's what made me decide to get the fusion. And as far as how I feel 2 weeks post surgery, I feel amazing. I can stand up pretty easily. It's a little bit slow, but this is 2 weeks post surgery, and I'm feeling pretty good. I don't know if you can see here the scar, but I've got a pretty significant scar on my back, and it's still healing, obviously. But as far as my mobility and being able to get around and stuff right now, I'm aces, man. I'm a lot further ahead than I thought I was going to be. You read stories about people getting spinal fusions and they're laid up for 2 or 3 weeks and they can't do anything, and that's kind of my mindset going into it. But I've been pleasantly surprised with how quickly I've recovered and how mobile I am already. So if you're in the same boat as me, and you have an MRI that shows a severe herniation and your disc space is, your bones are damn near touching like mine were, just go ahead, obviously exhaust all your options as far as cortisone shots, physical therapy, that kind of thing. But if it comes down to a fusion, don't be scared. I don't regret my decision. I think it was the right thing to do, and getting glimpses of how I feel now, and being pain-free, it was definitely the right decision for me. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. Please leave them in the comments. And as always, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.